welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for You Ought to Be in Pictures, released in 1940. It's the 287th in the series, and it's directed by Freleng. You can find the short on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 2 DVD set, on the Platinum Collection Volume 2 Blu-ray set, and on the Porky 101 DVD set, and I'll have links below to all those sets. It won't be on YouTube unless Warner Brothers themselves choose to upload it, as it is a copyrighted cartoon. So in case you haven't seen this one, we are at the Schlesinger studios, where Daffy convinces Porky to resign in order to become a leading man in major motion pictures. Schlesinger himself agrees to tear up the contract, and we follow Porky's attempt to become a leading man, while Daffy tries to take over the spotlight by buttering up Schlesinger. So this is a review I'm revisiting. So back in the day, I recorded an audio commentary session with a few participants. So it was a commentary, and then there was an extended bit at the very end. So what you're going to see is a re-edit of the commentary portion, and then a few tweaks done on the main video itself, so it flows more smoothly. It is a little bit raw compared to what I do now, so you hear a lot more ums and ahs and so on, but I still think you guys will enjoy it. And later on, you'll also hear from my good friend Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, who wasn't part of the crew at the time, but I think it's kind of important to have him on here so he can discuss the title track itself, as it plays a prominent role in this short. And I'll add a few thoughts as well. I'm not going to go scene by scene with this one like I usually do with reviews, as we pretty much cover everything in the original review portion, but I'll add a few things at the end as well. So, without further ado, let's start off with the commentary. I've got a few special guests. We've got Eli Copperman, Blue Genocide, and Austin Kelly. Say hi to the Warner Brothers studio.
Boo! Disney's better.
I was gonna say that none of us should be in pictures.
But yeah, nice pick for a cartoon, Anthony. I believe this is in the top 50 greatest cartoons book by Jerry Beck.
Mm-hmm. And so it should. It's definitely unique. And we saw Chuck Jones very briefly run into the camera in that running out shot that was reused, I think, from the Christmas party. First Friz, Freleng, Daffy Duck, and second Porky, because his first one, of course, was I Haven't Got a Hat. But this is his first, I guess, proper Porky, kind of.
Yeah, that's
I don't know.
surprising. I never even thought about that this is only the second time Friz used Porky.
So yeah, let's get some info out of here as we see our good friend Leon Schlesinger in the picture.
There's actually quite a lot. As for animator identifications, the majority of this scene is Herm Cohen's animation. The animators that worked on this one were Herm Cohen, Gil Turner, Dick Bickenbach, and Cal Dalton, who supposedly replaced a Rod Scribner who went off to work for Tex Avery and kind of Chuck Jones, like a mishmash of those two. There is some other interesting stuff later on, but if you'll look closely at these scenes, you'll see Leon glancing up, especially when he shakes Porky's hand, as if he thought he was too special to memorize the line. So he's like reading off of a cue card. Look right here when he's shaking the hand. Look, right before he says that star line, or like during it, he looks up. I think he's like looking at a cue card or something. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, this particular cartoon, I absolutely love. It's a blend of animation and live action that originated pretty much from the very beginning of animation. You got the Alice shorts, you know, and after this, you got Three Caballeros.
That is Mike Maltese, ladies and gentlemen, portraying the cop. Not voicing him. That's Mel Blanc, obviously, but. That's Mikey Maltese.
And when you know what Michael Maltese actually sounds like, it's sort of weird hearing Mel Blanc's voice come out. But anyway, they didn't have any sound equipment apparently so they shot all this silent, and yeah, they just did what they could. But also a lot of the backgrounds of my research were actually just big photographs, and they just animated over that just to save on costs, which is a good idea, actually. It's quite effective here.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, and I want to mention it before I forget. This cop was originally actually supposed to be Bugs Hardaway, but he's obviously not in the final film, and I think that's either because he left the studio or he didn't want to play the role in the first place. in the in-house newsletter that the Schlesinger studio had, the exposure sheet, Hardaway was complaining about the role and saying that they should have had Tubby Millar play him or something. So I'm assuming he didn't want to be in the final film because he maybe wasn't satisfied with his work, or he didn't want to do it in the first place, or I've heard he was angry when Friz came back and took over his unit. So maybe he was just angry about maybe he just didn't want to do anything for Friz, But that's just speculation.
Yeah.
Martha Siegel even said that when Friz came back and Hardaway was demoted to just a story guy again, he was not happy, and I guess that's part of why he ended up going to Lance instead, which, good for him, because we got Woody Woodpecker out of it.
Absolutely.
Now, what I do want to quickly say is that I really like the not models maybe, but the way Porky and Daffy are animated in this. Like, I really like the how cute they are. They're rounded more than I've seen them before.
With Daffy, it's less of the really wacky Clampett and Avery Daffy. This is like almost a different character. This one seems a lot more egotistical.
I think this is like the earliest precursor to the more like egotistical Daffy that Jones would just abuse later on. But I've always felt, and this is part of why Daffy Duck's my personal favorite cartoon character. This is a controversial opinion, but I think out of all the Looney Tunes characters, he's the most versatile character in terms of just what types of roles that they would put him in.
I just like how all this cartoon is animated, honestly. You would never notice that these are just pictures, because I didn't even know that until just watching this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is just a photo. What we're seeing right now with him doing that little dance.
That whole song sequence was Dick Bickenbach Animation, who, funnily enough, actually worked with Friz on some of the Captain and the Kids cartoons that he was away from Warner's working on over at MGM.
Sorry to interrupt. There's a shadow of a camera right there.
I didn't even notice that.
Yes. How dare an animation studio get the live action portion wrong? How dare
yeah. Professionals, God.
But you gotta love Schlesinger's toupee, though.
Animation, and it's kind of a similar gag to another Cal animated scene from the end of his last cartoon, Busy Bakers.
There's no doubt this is definitely a milestone in Looney Tunes history, particularly with Friz Freleng returning to the studio. Yes, he directed 2 prior to this, but this was like the first true Friz cartoon, at least in my opinion. But yeah, let's do a bit of a roundtable. Who wants to go first?
Well, let's get the one with the most information to go first. Austin, I think you should go.
Aw, why me? Okay. Alright, I guess I'll go first. So, this cartoon's kind of interesting. I've heard rumors that it was a Hardaway and Dalton cartoon originally, but no, it absolutely wasn't. This is clearly Friz Freleng's way of saying, look, Leon, thanks for having me back. Because if you know what the history behind the Friz was at this time, you'll know that Porky goes through the exact same thing, basically, that Friz does. In 1937-ish, Harmon and Ising leave MGM, and they stop making cartoons with them. So MGM is forced to open up their own shop and start making their own cartoons instead of outsourcing them from Harmon and Ising. So Fred Quimby is hired to produce them. He has no idea what he's doing. He's never made a cartoon in his life. And he has to raid all the cartoon studios. He gets Friz Freleng, which he's pretty proud of, away from the Warner Brothers studio. Just like Porky's lured away by Daffy out, and he breaks his contract with Leon. So Friz goes to MGM for around 2 years' time, and his quoting Friz on his time at MGM, I was tempted to go to MGM around 1938. It was actually 1937, but whatever. When they opened up the cartoon studio, I thought it was going to be like Schlesinger's, you just do your own thing, but it wasn't that way at all. And he's right. MGM was kind of running a bit of a tight place there where you had to do what they told you. Of course, Leon Schlesinger gave his employees creative freedom, so Friz was not used to this, and as soon as his contract was up, he ran back to the Warner studio, and, he came back. Hardaway and Dalton were working with his unit. He takes it over, and then everything's great again. He makes his cartoon. It's his third cartoon coming back, or at least in release order, Production numbers for Warner cartoons around this time are slim, so I'm not really sure if this was the first production-wise, but it would make sense if it was. It's not the first cartoon to combine live action with animation, but it's definitely one of the more well-known ones. Of course, the Out of the Inkwell series from the 20s did this all the time, but it actually went over quite well with the public. The Film Daily gave it a review, marking it as an entertaining cartoon, saying, "A new idea, and one that may have far-reaching effect in the making of cartoon shorts. This film employs human actors and hand-drawn characters with synchronized voices. For something that was no doubt intended to be largely an experiment, You Ought to Be in Pictures is very entertaining and equal in quality to any of the Schlesinger shorts. The story deals with the attempts of Porky Pig, Schlesinger's cartoon star, to leave the comedy field and enter the feature field. It is very well told. Music is good, photography and synchronization excellent. The background is the cartoon plant, and the major live-action actor is Leon Schlesinger. He is so good that he ought to be in pictures." We've come full circle there.
And as I said before, as I would have mentioned before, it just seemed like over at MGM, Friz just wasn't happy because the Captain and the Kids cartoons just weren't really that good, in my opinion. But yeah, that's just that. I don't know if that's just me, but I'm sure it's all of you guys as well. I mean, have you guys watched all of the Captain and the Kids cartoons?
I will have you know that they are my favorite cartoons of all time, and I am offended that you would even call that. No.
They're okay.
No, I can't sit through them.
Look, I've seen worse, but they were definitely uninspired and boring. But that's just me.
I like the animation, but that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
So Eli, what are your thoughts? Any tidbits you wanna add into this one?
Most of my tidbits are pretty much just about like my overall opinions on the cartoon itself. What I can say is that I can definitely understand why this is on Jerry Beck's 50 Greatest Cartoons book. I think, I'm not sure if it's in like my top 10 favorite Friz cartoons, but definitely in the top 20. Maybe at times it does run a little too long, but that's really about it. It's a really solid short. And like as I said earlier, this seems to be the point where Daffy was like just starting to get his like trademark egotistical attitude. Like later on, he'd be a lot more pompous and grumpy, but at this point, he's just more of like a wise guy sort of dog, which I like more. And I've always said, like, my good buddy Luke Perkins and I have said before that Friz understood Daffy's personality when he was, a little more negative and egotistical, a lot more than Chuck. Not that Chuck didn't by any means, but Friz just had his own funnier take on Daffy. And when he tried to imitate Chuck's Daffy, it was just like showed up his bugs. It was a little too grumpy. But like here, it works so well, and especially when he's interacting with Leon Schlesinger. Which, speaking of Leon, like obviously he's not an actor, but it's still cool to see him in the flesh there in this cartoon. I wonder how many kids who grew up on this were like, "Hey, what? Who is it, this guy?" But beyond that, Roger Rabbit, favorite movie of all time. I think like for this cartoon's time, it was like a huge technical breakthrough for the people at Warner's. Because like, if I remember correctly, I think Thad Komorowski said this. Compared to the people at Disney, the people at Warner's did more with less. And the fact that they were able to successfully combine live action with animation here is really impressive. Not only does Mike Maltese play the cop, but I think even in the studio, Jerry Chinicki and Henry Binder and other people play some studio people as well. And beyond that, it's kind of what would happen if the studio got full-blown meta, especially since that this was based on Friz's life from MGM to back to Warner Brothers. And man, I gotta say, it is a good thing Friz came back when he did, because where else would we have his legendary status? And that's all I gotta say. So 80 years later, the cartoon still holds up.
So, Blue, you've got some factoids for us, and yeah, just if you want to share your thoughts and some further interesting facts.
Okay, but first of all, I want to say, are you sure you don't want to see more Cal Dalton cartoons. Are you sure?
I'm sure.
All right, so the first thing I want to bring up is I found this list of the staff members who have cameos in this short. So we're going to make it fun for Anthony to try to edit this, but obviously we all know Leon Schlesinger is in this. Chuck Jones is one of the crowd rushing out during the lunch break. I'm pretty sure that Austin mentioned that it was the guy who hit the camera, or that was Anthony, I can't remember. Michael Maltese, he was the security guard, obviously. Bob Clampett was one of the other employees running off for lunch. Jerry Chinicki was the studio director. And Henry Binder and Paul Marin. They were the stagehands who were also calling for quiet. Binder is also the stagehand who throws Porky off the set. I don't know who Paul Marin is, honestly, but there he was. There's this great picture, actually, I found of the cast with Michael Maltese still in his police officer or guard uniform. The other thing I want to bring up is that this is actually one of the longest Looney Tunes shorts at a runtime of 9 minutes and 45 seconds. When it was released on VHS to get around the 1 hour VHS space restrictions, it was sped up faster so that it could clock at the usual time. Another couple shorts, such as The Wearing of the Grin and Doe for the Dodo, were also time compressed like that. As for my actual opinions on the short, I love it. It was really cool to see something this early on combine live action with animation. It's not the first time, obviously. Austin brought up some really good points about other cartoons that were doing it at the time, but I also wanted to mention the 1920s series of Alice cartoons from Walt Disney before he did Oswald and then later on Mickey Mouse. Were also combinations of a live girl with animation. So the whole live action mixed with animation was not as new as people might think it was, but it was basically perfected in Roger Rabbit. Obviously, this was a really cheap and effective way to do it, because I think this cartoon looks great. The animation is really on point, and honestly, I'm really happy to see Friz Freleng back, because, it's not Warner Brothers without Friz Freleng, honestly.
Friz was probably one of my lesser favorites. Like, I'll be more of a Chuck Jones and Bob Clampett sort of guy, right? But as I get older, I find myself appreciating what Friz did more and more.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have some really unpopular animation opinions, and it stems from the fact that I feel like Friz gets criticized a lot more now for doing things such as repeating jokes and being a lesser director in comparison to Jones. Now, here's the thing. I love Chuck Jones shorts. He's one of the best Looney Tunes directors of all time. He did some of the most important cartoons for the studio, and later on in life too. But honestly, and it's only out of my opinion, it's a wrong opinion, I'll tell you that right now. But in comparison, I prefer like the Freleng shorts to what Jones would do later on. And I'm not saying that there aren't standouts from later on. Like, obviously, What's Opera Doc was great. Like, I'm not trying to say that it's not. But Chuck is far from my favorite Looney Tunes director. I'll just put that out there right now.
Controversial.
Blasphemy! Blasphemy!
How dare you?
Yeah,
Chuck
I
was
know.
the best. His unit was called Unit A. How dare you?
People see a lot of his later films as remakes and just reuses of old plots, but if you look closer, they're actually improvements, and he's trying to improve on his older plots and ideas. A lot of Friz films in the early mid-40s were collaborations between Mike Maltese and Ted Pierce, neither of whom he was really a fan of. He was always fighting to try to get Warren Foster on his team as his story man, because he always said Warren was the only guy who could actually write a story, and the other guys could just do gags. Friz could do gags himself. He needed a guy who could do a story, a well-structured story. So when he gets Warren, he takes all those ideas that Maltese and Pierce had, and he's tweaking them and improving them and making them better, giving them more of a structure, improving on the gags. Of course, his comedy timing gets better and better, but if you look at those cartoons, they're not remakes, because they're just better. They're improvements. They're taking the old plot and they're doing something better with them. if that makes any sense.
Just so to like add into to what Austin was saying, you could also make the argument, and every cartoon studio is guilty of this. You would see, remakes of other cartoons, or they would use just the same plot again and again. You could argue that, audiences wouldn't really see the cartoons that much anyway. So, like, even if one person saw one cartoon and someone else were to see a cartoon with a similar plot as the other one, it wouldn't really make too much of a difference, at least back then.
Exactly. There was no such thing as binge watching and all that stuff. And now, making a guest appearance in this particular episode is my good friend Fox and a Fix, who's going to give his statement on the cartoon.
So I think this is a very special cartoon. It's actually about Friz. It says a lot about him after he came back from MGM, as you all know. It seems like he was starting to have a lot more fun with these cartoons, because before he went to MGM, he was like kind of on autopilot a lot of the times. But his 40s cartoons are magnificent most of the times, and this is definitely one of his first very creative, very funny cartoons. It was his first Daffy cartoon, which shows Daffy's kind of greedy side for the first time, which is very interesting, instead of just the, brain dead Daffy side of him, which was created by Tex Avery and Bob Clampett. This cartoon says a lot about Leon Schlesinger as well, because Leon was a big fan of Porky Pig. So it was very fun to see Leon actually interact with Porky Pig. And I'm really fascinated by how big a role Leon plays in this. I didn't know he was comfortable with being on camera that much, but he does a great job here. Of course, it's fun to see Michael Maltese act in this. And I wish they would make more cartoons like this, like a live-action animation hybrid. I could imagine that they are more expensive, and this is definitely a special because it's also a very long one compared to the others.
So, any final thoughts, guys, on this wonderful cartoon?
Go watch it. It's really funny.
It's a really good cartoon. And, I'm just going to say I'm happy that Friz was aware that he was not making good cartoons, and I'm happy that he just wasn't pleased with what he was doing at MGM, because think about how different cartoon history would have been if Friz didn't come back. We wouldn't have all those Oscars that Warner Brothers has, because of course Tweety and Speedy Gonzalez and Sylvester, those were kind of, at least pairing Tweety and Sylvester, that was kind of Friz's idea and Friz's kind of little baby there. And of course we would probably see all kinds of weird Captain and the Kids cartoons if he kept on working on those. But look, I'm just happy that Friz is back.
All right, guys. So let's do a usual send off. I don't know what should we send off with today.
Figaro, 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 woo! Figaro.
There we go. Blue, you want to give it a go?
Figaro, 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 Figaro.
Beautiful. Mwah.
I'm not going to do that, but since Fox isn't here, I'm going to steal his typical thing. Bing, whoop.
So that was the original video, and I really enjoyed doing that session. I should do probably more of those, and if you think I should, definitely let me know in the comments below. But like I said before, I'm not going to go through the short from start to finish in relation to a really deep dive, as most of the things were covered. I just want to point out a few things that weren't exactly mentioned in the original video, just some interesting observations here and there I've noticed in rewatching this short, because I guess this one is such a chore to rewatch. Oh, woe is me. No, I'm kidding, of course. I love this short. It's one of my favorites. So going through it again, hey, it's quite fun. So one of the things that interests me is, because of the low budget, what they had to do to get around it. And we already mentioned in the original video about them using still photos, which works. Most people can't really tell, right? But the footage of the exterior of the studio, only one bit was used as part of the Leon Schlesinger Christmas party video, which is all of them running out. And there was also the additional video of the staff members going in with a gun being pointed to them and that sort of thing. But I wonder if that and some of the shots here were from that same session, but they weren't used in everything. So you got that whole Leon Schlesinger studios in the beginning. That wasn't in the Christmas video, but in the Christmas video, we see the gun bit, but we don't see it here. We only see the other way around, but we see people walking in like normal. So my guess is that this whole thing was actually done together and they just used it for whatever purpose. And speaking of that Christmas video, one other thing I noticed is because, again, this was all low budget and the Christmas thing was just them having fun, right? And this was a professional production, but they both had another thing in common. Mel Blanc ended up having to dub a lot of the voices, and a lot of it's quite comical. Some of the staff members talk in that Christmas video and he's doing the voices, and I'm not sure who does the woman's voice, but it's for a bit of fun. And one other shot of that animator drawing Porky Pig, you'll notice, once again, this is a cheap way to do it. They just had a photo of the actual arm and then they just moved it around. And it's similar to what the Fleischers did in the old Coco the Clown shorts back in the 1920s. So it definitely was a cheaper alternative than to film the arm and then animate around that, because that would have been quite costly to do. All right, so we've got that scene where Daffy's convincing Porky to basically quit and become a leading man. But the background, people who know me and have been following this channel for a while know I love looking at stuff in the backgrounds, and this one's interesting because it's a still photo that they use to animate the characters on. And looking at the background, you've got 3 framed pictures, and they're from the various Warner Brothers shorts. The top one appears to be from The Night Watchman, which was the first Chuck Jones short once he took over Tashland's unit. And then you've got Robin Hood Makes Good on the lower right, and that's another Jones short that he did not long after The Night Watchman. I'm not sure on the left one. It does appear to be a Porky short. It might be a Hardaway Dalton one. So if you can identify that short, definitely let me know. It looks like it's Porky with that annoying duck character that follows him around. So yeah, definitely let me know if you know the answer to that one. And in the hallway leading to Leon Schlesinger's office, it looks like on the wall, at least the first 2 are characters from I Wanna Be a Sailor. If I'm incorrect, let me know, but that definitely looks like one of the birds that's in that short. Okay, so after a funny knocking sequence, we're in Schlesinger's office. Now, I do believe that this was done in a separate session to that one that was in the Christmas party, because there you have Leon Schlesinger dressed up in like a black suit, and here is in a white suit. But again, I like looking at backgrounds, and you can see some wonderful Porky Pig stuff in the background as well. And it's been noted in the past that a few times when he would actually take a look at the animation studio, because he was typically a hands-off producer, and that's the way everyone liked it over there, and they would just put up some Porky stuff. It's like, okay, you're making another Porky? Yeah, we're making another Porky short, and he was happy, and that was that. And they even poked fun at that in the Christmas video where he's actually playing with a Porky Pig doll. And, I can't blame him. Porky was a huge star after a few failed attempts, so Schlesinger's obviously happy with the fact that he's got money pouring into the studio. And if you look closely at Leon Schlesinger's table, underneath, you'll see a sheet. I believe that's like a buddy one sheet. I don't know why he would have that, but anyway. But the other thing is more interesting, that Telegraph Trail. So that's a John Wayne film for 1933, so the Telegraph Trail, and that was produced by Leon Schlesinger. So I thought that was nice that he had that in there, because Schlesinger didn't do just animation. He also did produce a few movies, including some of these John Wayne movies. So yeah, in case you didn't know, well, now you know. It's already been mentioned how low budget a lot of this is, especially of the live action portion. And it's quite clear that they didn't have any experienced cinematographers, because if you look at the shot where Leon says he'll be back and smiles at the camera, which I think is a nice little shot, but you can see that the focus is more on the bench as opposed to Leon himself, who looks kind of blurry. So it's quite clear that they didn't have an experienced cinematographer or anything to do that shot. Not saying anything bad about it. It's just an observation, just to point out that it was just, okay, they got this camera lying around, point, shoot, move on. And as you can see, if you don't have anyone experienced, you'll get shots where the thing that's supposed to be a bit sharper, in this case Leon, is not. Oh, and I love the bit where Daffy hurries Porky out the door and says, remember, don't take anything less than $6,000 a week. And in case you're wondering, $6,000 in 1940, adjusted for inflation, is $135,129. So yeah. But one thing I do want to know, and perhaps one of you guys watching this knows or has an idea, is how they did the sound effect of Porky's vehicle. I've never heard anything like it before, the bop, 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 as he's going along in that sort of older vehicle. I don't know if that's kind of like a little in-joke that he's just got this standard car while working for Leon. But anyway, that sound effect, if you guys have an idea of how that was done, definitely let me know in the comments.
Did you quit? Did you quit? Yeah, I quit. That's studio and you tell them I sent you. Remember, don't take less than $6,000 a week.
So after the to and fro between Porky and the security guard, again, as we mentioned already, played by Michael Maltese, there is one shot where he throws Porky's car out, and I would imagine that this would have been perhaps one of the more difficult or expensive shots in this short because of the fact that they had to blend everything perfectly. So I would imagine at the time of this shot, he would have picked up some sort of maybe a box or something like that and threw that out, and then the animator, of course, had to go in and painstakingly not only animate Porky, but also the vehicle so that it's on the edges of Michael Maltese there. It wouldn't have been easy to do, and yeah, if you freeze frame it, it can look a little bit shonky. I'm not putting it down or anything, okay? It just shows that they had still a fair while to go before they could properly blend animation and live action together when it comes to the two elements interacting with each other. But considering the budget, considering everything else, I think they still did a pretty decent job, even though, yeah, if you frame by frame it, looks kind of weird and wonky. But anyway, I feel this would have been the hardest shot in the short. Oh, and one thing that I thought was pointed out at the time, but clearly wasn't, is the fact that Porky manages to get in disguised as Oliver Hardy as part of the Laurel and Hardy comedy team, who around this point were still very popular, although their best work is perhaps behind them now, but they would still make a few more films over the next few years. Now, once Porky gets in, I really admire all the backlot shots of, well, it's a bygone era. It'd be a combination of live-action film shots with Michael Maltese in there and photographs, which, of course, is when Porky is by himself on the screen. And yeah, it's truly a bygone era. And as soon as Porky enters, I feel that they use pretty much just B-roll from another movie that would have been recorded at the time, or maybe they were filming another film, and the production here just asked, hey, we need a shot of like behind-the-scenes footage. Can we just put a camera here and that's that? Because I don't know if this dancing sequence is from anything else, but anyway, that's information lost to time, I guess. But we do know that aside from that scene where we see all those actors, it's just the various staff members playing certain roles like the director and so on. So yeah, it's just a matter of keeping the costs down, and yeah, they did it very effectively here. And this short actually does something very effective, and that's one of the principles that Robert Zemeckis did when he made Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and that's, of course, having the believability of these animated characters interacting with the real world. And while you don't see it at the same time, it actually works really well here. So when Porky sneezes, and then you see the after effects of everything falling over, I would imagine that's one of the things that Zemeckis picked up on when he was filming Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I mean, I'm thinking he might have, I don't know. I mean, surely he would have been familiar with this short because it's one of the more popular Warner Brothers shorts. But yeah, this is definitely that principle at work, although Zemeckis will take it one step further and have the characters interact with elements on screen at the same time, versus here we have one shot of Porky sneezing and then the other shot of a stagehand or someone just causing all those film cans to fall down. And much like the scene where Maltese throws out Porky in his car where he would have thrown a box or something, here you've got one of the stagehands throwing Porky out. And you'll notice that the film is very soft, so it would have been a case of them shooting that thing with him holding a sack or whatever, and then the animator going in and animating frame by frame, and then processing it together. And every time you add elements, the overall image becomes softer, so that's why this doesn't look as sharp as some of the other shots in this short. And the chase starts up again. Porky ends up entering stock footage, and it's from the Western film from 1936, California Mail, and that's something I've confirmed. So again, that's another way to keep the costs down while trying to do something that wasn't done too often, because usually it's pretty expensive to do. Admittedly though, when you see Porky in those few shots when they're using that stock footage, it doesn't look as good. It's probably the worst in this whole short, and I don't want people to think I'm bagging this film, okay, when you have the lesser shots like that. But yeah, they do so well in all of the shorts, but in those few shots that you see Porky in that stock footage, yeah, it's probably the least effective, hence why you only see him probably for a few moments, but that's okay. It's just an observation. And when he gets out of the stock footage, it's clearly a photo of the countryside. Now, we've already spoken about the wonderful animation of Daffy dancing around in the office, which again, this was a photo, but look at the top right corner. Hey, we see Gabby. And I'm sure that's Gabby, because what else looks like that, right? I'm not sure on the others. If you have any idea where those other photos come from, definitely let me know. But I just want to point out, this scene is fantastic. It's the ego driven Daffy, and I would argue that, yeah, this is pretty much his first appearance. And remember earlier on in the review where we pointed out that Friz liked to refine things, so yes, he would repeat certain gags, but he would improve on them. I would argue that Friz took this scene and redid it in a way in the upcoming short Yankee Doodle Daffy, which features Daffy pretty much the entire short, showcasing to Porky how great his up-and-coming newest star actually is. So yeah, this is another great example of Friz doing that. And that whole shot of Porky driving down the street, again, you can look at it and say, hey, this looks primitive, but I'd say that they still did a pretty decent job, all things considering. And for someone like me who likes looking at all these shots of yesteryear, just seeing what the neighborhood around the studio at the time looked like is pretty interesting, and especially if you slow-mo it and look at all the details. I wonder if this was someone on a motorbike with a sidecar or something, just with the way the camera weaves around the traffic there. It feels like it's not in a car. It feels like it must be a motorbike with a sidecar or something. Could be wrong, but let me know how you think this shot was achieved. So that trade magazine that Daffy was sitting on, that's the Hollywood Reporter. So that had been around for about a decade by this point, and studios would use that to see information regarding actors and so on. So it was a trade mag. And it's interesting looking at it, says here, studios watching Europe. So at this point, Europe would have either just gotten into war, so Germany would have invaded Poland roughly around this time when this was filmed, or very close to it. And I would imagine that, yeah, studios would have been looking very closely what was happening at Europe, because if Europe plunges into war, what's that going to happen to the box office receipts from overseas viewings? And that's something that actually affected Walt Disney, which is why Pinocchio and Fantasia underperformed when they first came out around this time. And Porky gets his job back, as you would expect, and looking at Leon's face in this shot, he just looks like he really got a kick out of it. He must have really loved Porky as a character. But anyway, at the very end, Daffy's like, hey, you didn't sign up a contract again, did you? Because I've got a tip about this major movie with Greta, Splat, Garbo. So that's a reference to Greta Garbo, the actress who was very famous at the time for her privacy, and she's attributed to the quote, I want to be left alone. So there we are. I guess I could put an Arnold Schwarzenegger quote in here. Remember when I told you this wouldn't be an in-depth review going through the entire short again? I lied. Well, I think I got a little bit carried away, but as I was watching it again, I thought, yeah, there's quite a few things that I missed here. I mean, is it important? Perhaps not, but this is a special short, and it definitely needs special coverage. And speaking of which, my good friend Manny Cruz, the tuning tenor, is going to go through the music in this short, because it is definitely the most underrated aspect of this short. In fact, we didn't even touch upon it in the original recording, and I think that's a shame, because the song that the title is based off of, it's kind of a callback, really, to Friz Freleng's earlier days when he did Merry Melodies, when he was promoting his song. So this is kind of a similar thing. Here, he's done his first Looney Tunes short since pretty much the last Buddy short he directed, because after that he just did Merry Melodies. So there you are. But without further ado, here comes Manny Cruz, the Toonie tenor. So here is Manny to say his part, because back then he didn't exist. He just popped up in all our collective consciousness and just like a Cabbage Patch Kid, except fully grown and, bald. But he came out and he ended up being on the channel, but I think this is a great one for me to talk to. So, hello, Manny.
That Cabbage Patch line was really good. You had to throw the bald zinger in, did you?
Sorry.
But yes, apparently now I've existed since the beginning of time. I've been in the ethos of the universe since the very in the beginning. The Toonie tenor has... No, let me stop. But anyway, speaking of Toonie tenor, it's time for Manny's Music Time with music trivia for you today. Bum. For the 1940 Looney Tune cartoon, You Ought to Be in Pictures, directed by Isidore Friz Freleng. I almost said is Freleng. I mean, Izzy. It's a shorter version of Isidore. I mean, you already said that stuff, but I had to be in character as the Toonie tenor. Got to keep the gimmick going. But I did want to jump on here because I love this cartoon. And doing a rewatch, I forgot how much I really enjoy this cartoon. I mean, part of it I'm biased because I've said it a gazillion times. Porky and Daffy is my favorite duo. I love watching just the characters interact with each other. And just also there's aspects of the music that I forgot about, that while I was doing a rewatch a few hours ago, I was like, man, they got some great stuff here. So obviously the cartoon starts off with the merry-go-round broke down, the Looney Tunes theme. This cartoon contains one of my absolute favorite Carl Stalling moments that he ever wrote down. His arrangement of the title, You Ought to Be in Pictures, obviously the name of the same song, and the way that the cartoon starts with You Ought to Be in Pictures, you have the trumpets playing the melody, bum, bum, ba-dum, da-dum, dun, and then he changes it up a little bit rhythmically. But it's like you have the trumpets playing the melody, and you hear the vibraphone playing in the background as well, and it's just, oh. I've listened to that particular arrangement a gazillion times, especially in one of the Golden collections that featured this music from the beginning of the cartoon playing all over, but I never get tired of it. And we're recording this 3 days after Carl Stalling's birthday, so happy belated birthday, Carl Stalling. And yeah, I just absolutely love the arrangement of the song in this one. So other songs you hear in this cartoon, I mean, obviously the title track, You Ought to Be in Pictures, it kind of feels like a merry melody because the name of the song is the name of the cartoon, so even though it's a Looney Tune, but anyway, I digress. When you have Porky talking to Leon Schlesinger, you hear, I didn't even notice it until this time, but also I was looking at the cue sheet. I'm forever blowing bubbles, and I chuckled at it. You know, you hear it for a nice chunk.
Hello, Mr. Hello, Leon.
Well, Porky, what's on your mind? What can I do for you?
You see, I've been in cartoons a long time, and I was thinking that I thought if I had a chance to act in the features,
when Leon is saying goodbye to Porky, you hear aloha oi, you know, farewell, so on and so forth.
Don't forget me when you're a star. He'll be back.
Now, another arrangement that I always love listening to, and even as when I was younger, I'm like, ooh, I really like this song, but I don't know what it's called. So this is when Porky sneaks into the film set, and the director's yelling, you know, action and all that. You have some of the guys in the studio. I think Jerry Chinicki is there, as well as Henry Binder, and Mel Blanc doing their voices for quiet. I love that. You hear the song Where Was I when the dancers are dancing and the film crew is filming, you know. Da, 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 da. I've always liked that song. I think it was also in, off the top of my head, Hollywood Steps Out. And that's how I became familiar with it as a kid. When Porky, he's escaping after being yelled at by Mike Maltese by way of Mel Blanc, and he's being chased out of the studio, you hear Western scene when he's trying to escape, and that's the music of J.S. Zemechnik. I finally said his name right. It's not Zemechnik.
Out of here.
If you listen to the commentary for The Case of the Stuttering Pig, I kept saying his name wrong, so I apologize for that. But one of the more recent merry melodies I did, I talk about J.S. Zemechnik. I don't remember what it is right now, but go listen to all of them because they're fun. Now, the scene where Daffy is, you know, pitching to Leon, pretty much saying, I'm going to be the new Looney Tunes star. The melody of the song that he's singing, you know, I'll be famous on the screen, da-da-da, and I'm like, what is the name of that song? And thankfully, the cue sheets has it listed as Concert in the Park, but obviously with different lyrics. And what's neat about Concert in the Park, it was composed by Cliff Friend and Dave Franklin. Those are the same two men who wrote The Merry-Go-Round Broke Down, so a nice connection to the Looney Tunes theme, same composers.
I'd be famous on the screen, the greatest ever seen. Oh, how my feet would go. Bill Robinson is slow. Fred Astaire never could top this one.
And in the middle of Daffy singing Concert in the Park, he switches to Largo al Factotum from The Barber of Seville by Rossini. You know, la da 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 ba. Love his rendition of it. Better than any opera singer I've ever heard. And the cartoon ends with a nice sweet arrangement of Home Sweet Home as Porky returns back to the drawing that he was in the beginning of the short.
Hey, Porky, I hope you didn't sign up here again.
So yeah, we got some nice music cues in this one, but it's just more than the cues themselves. I just love the way that Carl Stalling did the arrangements in this one. And obviously we have the Carl Stalling projects, the two of them that came out in the early 90s. But it would be great if we had more access to just some of the background music that was in these cartoons. I mean, obviously that's easier said than done because, you know, these were recorded on film and this more than 80 years ago. But just some quality work musically, and just with the short itself, I love this cartoon. I forgot how good it is. It's easily one of the best the studio ever made. And also, if you're familiar with the story behind it, you know how Friz left Warner to go to MGM, and it's kind of his way of saying, hey, Leon, I'm sorry, thanks for taking me back. And it's nice to see little glimpses and pieces of Termite Terrace from this time period. I didn't do it this time, but I guess after the commentary that we're recording, I want to pause some of the scenes, and I want to really, now that it's in HD, that we can really see clearly the backgrounds, like the stuff on Leon's desk, Leon's office itself, the film set, and in the beginning where it says Warner Brothers Pictures, Leon Schlesinger Productions, home of Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies. I just love the way that that text is painted on the side of the studio. And I don't know, it could be like a nice little wallpaper, especially for us Looney Tune nerds that are more familiar with the history of the studio. But yeah, this is definitely a masterpiece. I'm happy to have revisited it. Oh, and I'm scanning through the video, and you probably talked about this, Anthony, in your commentary, but I'm curious how they were able to film the scene where Porky is driving in the Los Angeles traffic. Like, how do they pull that off?
Yeah, I asked the question directly to everyone. I think they did it with a motorbike and a sidecar, but again, people with more knowledge about that can definitely let me know in the comments.
Good, all the nerds will come out to like, well, actually, no.
But
But
we'll see. I'm curious. How do they do it? I'll be very curious.
they developed CG, you know, back in the late 30s, early 40s. But the next time I go to LA, I do want to visit the current locations of Leon Schlesinger Productions was back in the day. But I'm like looking at all these old cars from the 30s and 40s and the shops and people wearing suits and top hats. I'm a history geek, so, you know, this type of stuff intrigues me.
So, in other words, this is a great short. What would you rate this one?
Oh, 10 out of 10. Absolutely. It's one of the 100 best Looney Tunes shorts in Jerry Beck's book, and deservedly so. And it's a very nice blend of live action and animation in 1940. I mean, it was giving me vibes. Obviously, I'm going to think of this film, but it was giving me vibes of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I wouldn't be surprised if the people who worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit were inspired by this cartoon. It would make a whole lot of sense if that was the case.
Definitely. And I think you rated this one 10 out of 10. Now back to the Cabbage Patch you go.
Indeed.
But thanks for coming on this. Well, it's a jam-packed episode, but we definitely needed to address the criminally underrated aspect of this short, which is, of course, the music.
Indeed. And thanks for having me read, because it's been a while since I've seen this one. And it was great to revisit it, you know, definitely musically. So thanks for having me on. And hopefully you won't rip up my contract. Actually, no, I think you have a spare contract. You have like a spare PDF of the No, I'm just kidding. We never signed a contract, but, you know.
Where should we follow you?
Follow me to the Cabbage Patch, clearly. You might get some hair loss in the process. No. You may follow me on social media at the Tooney Tenor, TheTooney. TENOR, for updates of my life as a musician as well as a multifaceted geek. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I am on YouTube. I'm going to hopefully be making my own content soon. And I just joined Blue Sky. So please find me on Blue Sky. I also have a TikTok as well because I'm with the kids these days. No, it's fun. But yeah, thanks for having me on, and it's always a pleasure. And let me start making $9,000 a week. We'll work out the deal after we stop the recording.
Indeed. But back to the video.
Adios.
Okay, so after all of that, what do I think of this short? Come on, what do you think I'm going to say about this short? It's a masterpiece. I mean, is the blending of live action and animation perfectly executed? No, there are definitely flaws here and there, but once you know that they had to work with a very low budget and what they had to do to work around certain elements to make this work, it's very impressive. And on top of all that, despite all the technological stuff in this short, one important fact remains. It's funny. It's a great idea for a short, and it's really funny. It's got great animation, and yes, the music is wonderful as well. Plus, seeing Leon Schlesinger on screen like this, it's great. They never really did stuff like this later on once Schlesinger sells the studio to Warner Brothers. So, yeah, this is just one of those things where, yes, it's a novelty, but it's so well done that it's just a whole lot of fun. It's 10 out of 10. It's definitely one of the best cartoons ever made. Not just of Warner Brothers, but overall. So, there we are. Thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
Cause I know it is a pip of a job at $12,000 a week. Playing opposite Greta. Carbo.